The millionaire is paralyzed when seeing a black beggar praying in hidden streets. Arthur Pemberton, a name whispered in Wall Street boardrooms and splashed across society pages, lived the high life. Penthouse views, custom suits, and a different dazzling date every night. But behind the $1,000,000 smile lurked a secret. Arthur believed everyone had a price. Every handshake, every compliment, a transaction. Then, a blustery November night changed everything. He'd just survived a brutal board meeting, his nerves frayed. "Jenkins, just drive," he'd snapped at his long-suffering chauffeur. Instead of the usual route, Jenkins took a turn into the village. The cobblestone streets, usually picturesque, felt suffocating under the gloomy sky. "Pull over," Arthur barked, needing air. Any air. Stepping out of the rolls, he froze. It was like a scene ripped from a movie. But this was real. A young black guy, barely 20, knelt on the cold pavement. Head bowed, hands clasped, lost in prayer. His clothes were worn, his hands roughened. A baseball cap lay beside him, holding a scattering of coins. But it wasn't the poverty that stopped Arthur. It was the look on the kid's face. A raw, desperate hope that Arthur hadn't seen since he was a tip better. They locked eyes, just for a split second. But in that second, Arthur saw something. Recognition? Accusation? The kid quickly looked away. Arthur, rattled, fumbled for his wallet, pulled out a wad of hundreds, and practically threw them into the baseball cap. "Drive, Jenkins, now." As the rolls purred back into traffic, Arthur risked a glance. The kid was staring right at the car. Not with gratitude. No, this was something else. A chilling calmness, a knowing that made Arthur's skin crawl. Back in his sterile penthouse, overlooking a city that was his personal playground, Arthur couldn't shake the image. He poured himself a stiff scotch, trying to write it off, a momentary glitch in his armor. But then he saw it. A single playing card, the Queen of Spades, lying face up on his pristine white carpet. He knew damn well it wasn't there before. As he picked it up, a faint smell filled the air. Rain. Definitely rain. But underneath that, something earthy, something unsettling. Then the lights went out. The city vanished. Darkness. "Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer um alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você tá aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários de qual cidade você tá assistindo. Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir." Darkness. Arthur fumbled for his phone, cursing. Power outage? In his building? Unthinkable. He flicked on the flashlight app, the beam cutting a weak swathe through the blackness. The penthouse felt different. Colder. He could hear the rain lashing against the windows, a sound he usually found soothing. Tonight, it grated. He padded through the living room, the beam dancing across the expensive furniture, finally landing on the Queen of Spades. It was still there, mocking him. He knelt down, reaching for it, and that's when he heard it. A low chuckle. It wasn't in the room. It was in his head. Arthur recoiled, scrambling back. "Who's there?" he croaked, his voice cracking. Silence, just the rain, and the pounding of his own heart. He gripped the phone tighter, the flashlight beam shaking. He had to get out, now. He stumbled towards the door, fumbling with the deadbolt. As he pulled it open, a figure stood there, silhouetted against the dim hallway light. It was Jenkins, his chauffeur. But not quite. Jenkins' usually impassive face was contorted in a grotesque grin. His eyes, normally hidden behind tinted lenses, glowed with an unnatural light, and in his hand, a tire iron. The one he kept in the trunk for emergencies. "Jenkins? What the hell?" Arthur started, but Jenkins didn't answer. He just raised the tire iron. The metal glinting in the weak light. Arthur knew. He knew this wasn't Jenkins. Not anymore. He slammed the door shut, throwing the deadbolt. He heard Jenkins, slam against the door, the wood splintering. Panic clawed at Arthur's throat. He had to get to the panic room. The one he'd installed after that attempted kidnapping last year. He raced through the penthouse, the beam of his flashlight bouncing wildly. He reached the hidden door behind the bookshelf, fumbled with the keypad, and then he saw it. Scrawled across the wall in what looked like blood. "Everyone has a price, Arthur." The keypad wouldn't work. He punched the numbers again and again, but nothing. He was locked out. The door to the penthouse splintered again, cracking further. Jenkins. It was getting closer. Arthur looked around, desperate. His eyes landed on the scotch bottle. He grabbed it, smashing it against the edge of the bar. The glass shattered, leaving him with a jagged weapon. He turned to face the gore. He was ready. Or as ready as a millionaire in soap pajamas could be. The door burst open. Jenkins, stood there, grinning, the tire iron raised. Arthur lunged, swinging the broken bottle. It connected with a sickening thud. Jenkins, staggered back, momentarily stunned. But then something happened. Something impossible. The face of Jenkins rippled, shifting. The grotesque. Grin melted away. The unnatural light faded from his eyes. And then, standing before Arthur, was his father. His dead father. The one he'd prayed for as a kid. The one he hadn't seen in over 30 years. "Dad," Arthur whispered, the broken bottle falling from his trembling hand. But how? His father smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You forgot your promise, Arthur," he said, his voice a low rasp. "You forgot what really matters." And then his father raised the tire iron, not in anger, not in hatred, but in sorrow. "This isn't how I wanted it to end, son," he said. "But you left me no choice." He swung the tire iron. The world went black. Then a voice, cold and clear, echoed in the darkness. "Checkmate." The world went black. Then a voice, cold and clear, echoed in the darkness. "Checkmate." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Then a click. And another. The lights flickered back on, one by one. Arthur blinked, disoriented. He was on the floor, sprawled amidst broken glass and spilled scotch. Jenkins, was gone. His father, gone. Just him, alone. He pushed himself up, his head throbbing. The tire iron lay beside him, untouched. He hadn't been hit. It was all a hallucination, a nightmare. He staggered to the bathroom, stared at his reflection. Bloodshot eyes, pale skin, a broken millionaire in silk pajamas. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to regain some semblance of composure. Then he saw it. In the mirror, reflected behind him, a figure, sitting on the edge of his bed. The young black guy from the village. Arthur whirled around. "You! What the hell are you doing here? How did you get in?" The kid didn't flinch, looked at Arthur, his expression unreadable. "You know why I'm here, Mr. Pemberton." Arthur's mind raced. Was this some kind of elaborate extortion scheme? had Jenkins, or whoever the hell that was, put him up to this? Get out! He snarled, his voice shaking. I'm calling the cops! The kid chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. The cops can't help you now, Arthur. This is between you and me. Between us? I don't even know you, Arthur protested, backing away. The kid stood up, and Arthur noticed something he hadn't seen before. The kid wasn't wearing rags. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit, expensive, like Arthur's. You don't recognize me? The kid asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. The Queen of Spades. He flipped it over. On the back, a photo. A young Arthur, maybe 10 years old, standing next to his mother. But not his mother. A woman Arthur had never seen before. A black woman. My name is James, the kid said, his voice now smooth and controlled. James Reynolds, and I'm your brother. Arthur stared, speechless. His brother? Impossible. His mother was... Your mother was a good woman, Arthur, James continued, his eyes hardening. But your father, he wasn't. He paused, letting the silence hang in the air. He paid her to disappear, gave her money to raise me, as long as she never contacted him. Or you. Arthur felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. His carefully constructed world, his $1,000,000 life, it was all built on a lie. A lie his father had perpetuated for decades. Why now? Arthur managed to choke out. Why come here now? James's eyes flashed with anger. Because I'm broke, Arthur. Because my mother is sick. And because you're sitting up here in your fancy penthouse, living the high life. While I'm struggling to survive. He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. It's time you paid your dues, brother. Arthur looked at James, at the anger in his eyes, at the undeniable resemblance. And he knew. He knew this wasn't about money. Not entirely. This was about something much deeper. Something Arthur had never understood. What do you want? Arthur asked, his voice barely a whisper. James smiled, a cold, predatory smile. I want what's mine, Arthur. Everything. He pulled out a small silver pistol, pointed it directly at Arthur's heart. Starting with your life. Starting with your life. The gun was cold, metallic, pointed right at his chest. Arthur's life, his empire, everything he'd clawed his way to build. About to end in his sterile penthouse. Over money? Over a lie his father had buried. But something was off. James's face. It wasn't pure hatred. There was a hesitation. A flicker of something else. Do it, Arthur whispered, his voice barely audible. He was done. Done with the lies, the guilt, the emptiness. James's hand trembled. He lowered the gun slightly. I can't. Arthur stared. James's face crumpled. He threw the gun on the plush carpet. I can't do it. I'm not a killer. He sank to his knees, sobbing. I wanted you to understand, to feel what I felt. Arthur felt a surge of something he hadn't felt in decades. Compassion. He knelt beside James, placing a hand on his shoulder. I do understand, he said softly, more than you know. And then the world exploded. Not literally, but it felt like it. The penthouse door burst open again. This time it wasn't Jenkins. It was a woman. Tall, elegant, with ice-cold blue eyes. She held a gun too, but it wasn't pointed at Arthur. It was pointed at James. Don't move, darling, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Or you're both dead. Arthur stared, his mind reeling. Who the hell was this woman? Mom? James stammered, his face white with shock. Arthur's head snapped back and forth. Between them, trying to make sense of the impossible. This was James's mother? The woman his father had paid off? But she looked nothing like he expected. "You were supposed to stay away, James," the woman hissed, taking a step closer. "I gave you everything, a new life, and you threw it all away for this?" "But why are you here?" James pleaded, tears streaming down his face. The woman's expression hardened. "Because I can't let him ruin everything again." She gestured towards Arthur with the gun. "He doesn't deserve any of this." "What are you talking about?" Arthur demanded, his voice shaking. The woman laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "You really don't know, do you, Arthur? Your father, he wasn't exactly the saint you thought he was." She paused, taking a deep breath. "James isn't your half-brother, Arthur. He's your son." The world tilted. Arthur felt like he was falling into an abyss of lies and deceit. "James, his son? Your father, he didn't just pay me to disappear, Arthur," the woman continued, her voice rising. "He forced me to give up our child. He said it would ruin his reputation. And then, years later, he did the same thing to you. You think your mother was a saint?" She asked mockingly. She was just another one of his victims, paid off to keep quiet. Arthur couldn't breathe. His father, a monster. His life, a lie. Everything he thought he knew, shattered. The woman raised the gun. "I'm sorry, James," she said, her voice trembling. "But I can't let him destroy you too." And then, before Arthur could react, she pulled the trigger. But the bullet didn't hit James. It hit Arthur. He stumbled back, clutching his chest. A searing pain ripped through him. He looked at James, at the horror in his eyes. And then he saw something else. Something that chilled him to the bone. The woman wasn't aiming at James anymore. She was aiming at herself. "This ends now," she whispered, her voice barely audible. And then she pulled the trigger again. The gun went off. He stumbled back, clutching his chest. A searing pain ripped through him. He looked at James, at the horror in his eyes. And then he saw something else. Something that chilled him to the bone. The woman wasn't aiming at James anymore. She was aiming at herself. "This ends now," she whispered, her voice barely audible. And then she pulled the trigger again. A sickening thud echoed in the penthouse. She slumped, too. The floor, the gun clattering beside her. Silence. James screamed, a raw, primal sound of utter despair. He rushed to her side, cradling her head in his lap. "Mom! Mom, no!" Arthur stood there, swaying, the world blurring at the edges. He felt a warmth spreading through his chest. His vision tunneled. He was dying. But he couldn't die. Not like this. Not without understanding. He stumbled towards them, each step an agonizing effort. "Why?" he gasped, his voice a ragged whisper. "Why all the lies?" James looked up, his face streaked with tears and blood. She was protecting me, from both of you." Arthur didn't understand. Protecting him from what? He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched James's face. "Son," he managed to say. And then he saw it, reflected in James's tear-filled eyes. A figure standing behind him. He tried to turn, but it was too late. A sharp, agonizing pain exploded in his back. He gasped, his knees buckling. He fell to the floor, landing heavily beside James and his mother. He looked up, his vision swimming. Standing over him was Jenkins. But not Jenkins as he'd seen him before. Not the grotesque demon from earlier. This Jenkins was calm, composed, almost regal. "You were always so blind, Arthur," Jenkins said, his voice smooth and even, "so easily manipulated." Arthur stared, confusion swirling in his mind. "Jenkins, what?" Jenkins smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "You thought your father was the puppet master, didn't you? That he orchestrated everything. He was just a pawn, just like you." He knelt down, his face inches from Arthur's. "My family has been watching over yours for generations, Arthur, guiding you, protecting you, ensuring that you remained on the path we chose for you." Arthur's mind raced. "What path? What are you talking about?" "The path to power, Arthur. Unimaginable power. The kind that can reshape the world." He paused, his eyes gleaming with fanaticism. "But you strayed. You started to question things, to feel things, to care." He spat the word out like a curse. "That's why she had to be removed." He gestured towards Jane's mother. "She was a liability." Arthur couldn't believe what he was hearing. Jenkins controlling his family? For generations? It was insane. "But why?" Arthur choked out. "Why me?" Jenkins chuckled. "Because you, Arthur Pemberton, are the key, the final piece of the puzzle. The bloodline. But you were weak. You needed encouragement." He glanced at James, a flicker of pity in his eyes. "Collateral damage. I'm afraid he served his purpose, showing you the truth." Then Jenkins' expression hardened. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, ornate dagger. "It's time to complete the ritual, Arthur, to fulfill your destiny." He raised the dagger above Arthur's chest, but just as he was about to strike, James lunged. He tackled Jenkins, sending them both crashing to the floor. The dagger flew from Jenkins' hand, skittering across the marble floor. They grappled. A desperate struggle for survival. Arthur watched, helpless, his lifeblood draining away. James managed to get on top, pinning Jenkins to the ground. He grabbed the dagger, his hand trembling. "Don't do it, James," Arthur gasped. "Don't become like him." James hesitated, his face contorted in agony. He looked at Arthur, his eyes filled with despair. I don't know what to do," he sobbed. And then a voice, cold and clear, echoed in the penthouse. "Finish it, James." Arthur's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway was his father. But not his dead father. Not the sad, knowing figure he'd seen earlier. This was his father as he remembered him. Cold, calculating, powerful, and very much alive. "Dad?" Arthur whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. His father smiled, a cruel, triumphant smile. "Welcome to the family business, Arthur. Welcome to the family business, Arthur." James olhou para o pai incrédulo. A faca tremia na sua mão. Eu ali no chão, sentindo a vida escorrer. Vendo os dois, aquilo não podia ser real. "Acaba com isso, James." Meu pai repetiu, a voz fria como gelo. "Ele é uma ameaça. Sempre fui." "Ameaça? Eu? Mas o que estava acontecendo ali?" James começou a chorar de novo, a faca quase caindo da mão. Ele não conseguia. Não tinha coragem. "Eu não sou como vocês." Ele soluçou. "Nunca vou ser." Meu pai suspirou, como se tivesse perdido a paciência. Ele caminhou até James. Tirou a faca da mão dele com uma facilidade assustadora. "Você é um fraco", meu pai disse, olhando para o James com desprezo. "Sempre foi." Então ele se virou para mim. O olhar era de puro ódio, um ódio que eu nunca tinha visto antes. "Desculpa, filho", ele disse, a voz quase um sussurro. "Mas você nunca foi bom o bastante." E enfiou a faca em mim. De novo. A dor era insuportável. Senti o sangue jorrando, quente, molhando a minha roupa. o ar sumindo dos meus pulmões. Vi o James gritando, tentando impedir, mas meu pai era forte demais. E então, tudo ficou escuro. Mas a escuridão não durou muito. De repente eu estava flutuando, olhando para baixo, vendo meu corpo ali, estendido no chão, ensanguentado. Vendo James desesperado, chorando em cima de mim. Vendo meu pai, sorrindo. E aí eu entendi. Nada daquilo era real. Ou melhor, era real, mas não da forma que eu pensava. Eu não estava morrendo. Eu já estava morto. Tudo aquilo era um julgamento. Um julgamento da minha vida, dos meus pecados, dos meus erros. E o pior, eu tinha falhado. Eu tinha deixado o mal vencer. Mas espera aí. Se eu estava morto, quem era aquele cara ali parado? Na porta? Um cara idêntico a mim, só que mais jovem, mais forte e com um sorriso diabólico. Ele olhou para meu pai, que arregalou os olhos, apavorado. Impossível, meu pai, sussurrou. Você não podia ter voltado. O meu clone, ele riu. Uma risada fria que me deu calafrios. Eu sempre volto, pai, ele disse. Sempre. E então, ele se virou para o James. Olá, irmão, ele disse, com um sorriso que não chegava aos olhos. Vamos nos divertir um pouco. James looked at my dad. Disbelief written all over his face. The knife trembled in his hand. Me on the floor, life leaking out. Watching them both. This couldn't be real. Finish it, James, my dad repeated, his voice cold as ice. He's a threat. Always has been. A threat? Me? What was even happening anymore? James started crying again, the knife almost slipping from his grip. He couldn't do it. He didn't have the guts. I'm not like you, he sobbed. I'll never be. My dad sighed, like he was losing patience. He walked over to James, took the knife from his hand, with an ease that was terrifying. You're weak, my dad said, looking at James with disgust. Always have been. Then he turned to me. Look, pure hatred. A hatred I'd never seen before. Sorry, son, he said, his voice barely a whisper. But you were never good enough. And he plunged the knife into me again. The pain unbearable. I felt the blood gushing out, hot, soaking my clothes, the air leaving my lungs. I saw James screaming, trying to stop him, but my dad was too strong. And then, everything went dark. But the darkness didn't last long. Suddenly, I was floating, looking down, seeing my body there, stretched out on the floor, bloody. Seeing James, heartbroken, crying over me. Seeing my dad, smiling. And then I understood. None of this was real. Or, it was real, but not in the way I thought. I wasn't dying. I was already dead. All of this was a judgment of my life, my sins, my mistakes. And the worst part, I'd failed. I'd let evil win. But wait a minute. If I was dead, who was that guy standing in the doorway? A guy identical to me, only younger, stronger, and with a smile. Devilish. He looked at my dad, whose eyes widened, terrified. Impossible, my dad whispered. You couldn't have come back. My clone, he laughed. A cold laugh that sent shivers down my spine. I always come back, Dad, he said. Always. And then he turned to James. Hello, brother, he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Let's have some fun. James just stared, frozen. My dad took a step back, a look of sheer panic on his face. You weren't supposed to exist. I made sure of it. The clone chuckled, a low, menacing sound. Oh, Daddy, you thought you could control everything? You thought you could erase me? I am you, after all. Your ambition. Your ruthlessness. Just without the pesky conscience. And that's when it happened. Something shifted. In the air, a weird energy, like static electricity. The lights flickered violently, and for a split second, the clone seemed to shimmer, to flicker out of existence. And then he was gone, vanished. But it wasn't just him that disappeared. Everything changed. The opulent penthouse, the blood-soaked carpet, James kneeling beside me. It all dissolved, like a dream fading away. I wasn't floating anymore. I was somewhere else. A small, dimly lit room. I was sitting in a chair, my hands tied behind my back. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and something else, something metallic. Across from me, sitting at a table, was a woman. Older, her face etched with lines of worry and familiarity. And then it hit me. I knew her. I hadn't seen her in years, but I knew her. It was my shrink, Dr. Albright. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of pity and fear. "Arthur," she said softly, "it's time you woke up." Woke up? What was she talking about? "What's going on?" I croaked, my throat dry. "Where am I?" Dr. Albright sighed, running a hand through her graying hair. "You're in reality, Arthur. Or as close to it as we can get you, anyway." She leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. "The penthouse, the murders, the family drama, all of it. It was a simulation." A simulation? My entire life? A simulation? "But why?" I asked, my mind reeling. "You were a patient at the Blackwood Institute, Arthur," Dr. Albright explained, her voice trembling. You suffered a severe head trauma. You've been in a coma for 15 years. 15 years? A coma?" "The simulation," she continued. "It was an experimental therapy, a way to process your trauma, to help you reintegrate into the world." "But the people," I stammered. "James, my father, they weren't real?" Dr. Albright shook her head sadly. "They were constructs, Arthur, based on fragments of your memories, your fears, your desires." Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "The simulation, it's failing, Arthur. Something went wrong, terribly wrong. Another consciousness, it's entered the simulation. It's influencing it, corrupting it. The clone. We think," Dr. Albright hesitated, her voice cracking. "We think it's a part of you, Arthur, a repressed part. Your darkness, your id." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "We need you to fight it, Arthur, to regain control of the simulation before it consumes you completely, before it leaks into reality." And then the lights flickered again. The room started to shake. Dr. Albright screamed, "He's here, Arthur! He's taking over!" And then everything went black. But this time, it wasn't the darkness of death. It was something else, something colder. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the penthouse. But it wasn't the same. Everything was distorted, twisted. The walls were bleeding. The furniture was rotting. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and standing before me, grinning, was my clone. "Hello again, brother," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "Looks like we have some unfinished business." He stepped closer, his eyes glowing with an unholy light. "And this time, there's no escape." And then he lunged. Ele avançou. Aquele sorriso dava para sentir o cheiro do enxofre. Era eu, mas corrompido, destruído. Tentei gritar pro James, para ele fugir, mas a voz não saía. Meu corpo, travado. De repente o clone parou. Olhou por cima do meu ombro. "Você", ele disse, a voz, surpresa. Me virei com toda a força que tinha e vi a doutora Albright, mas não era a doutora. Albright da simulação. Era real, como eu nunca tinha visto. Na mão, uma arma, apontada. "Pra mim. Sinto muito, Arthur", ela disse, A voz carregada de tristeza. Mas não tem outro jeito. O clone recuou, espantado. O que você tá fazendo? Ele gaguejou. Ela nem olhou para ele. O foco era em mim. Você nunca devia ter descoberto a verdade, Arthur. Ela disse. Nunca. A verdade? Que verdade? Eu não entendo, eu consegui dizer. A voz, um fio. Ela respirou fundo. Você não é um paciente, Arthur. Ela disse. Você é o projeto. O projeto? O Blackwood Institute. Não é um hospital. É uma instalação de pesquisa. Ela continuou. E você é o resultado de anos de experimentação. Experimentação? O clone olhava tudo boquiaberto, assustado. Pela primeira vez, assustado. Nós criamos você, Arthur. Geneticamente engenheirado, para ser perfeito. Perfeito? Mas deu errado, ela continuou. Você desenvolveu consciência, emoções, livre-arbítrio. E aquilo era um problema. A simulação não era para te curar, Arthur, ela disse. Era para te controlar, para suprimir o que você realmente é. O clone entendeu. A ficha caiu. E ele sorriu. Então eu sou você, sem as amarras? Ele perguntou, a voz carregada de excitação. A doutora Albright ignorou ele. Eu sinto muito, Arthur. Ela repetiu. Mas o mundo não pode correr o risco. E apertou o gatilho. Só que a bala não me acertou. Acertou o clone. Ele caiu no chão, morto. E no mesmo instante tudo mudou. De novo. Eu não estava mais no penthouse. Estava num laboratório, cheio de cientistas, me olhando com horror. E então eu entendi. Eu não era humano. Eu era uma arma. E eles tinham perdido o controle. A doutora Albright se aproximou, o rosto desfigurado pelo medo. Ativação protocolo 0, ela disse, a voz tremendo. E então eu senti uma dor lancinante, como se estivessem desligando a minha mente. Mas antes de apagar completamente, eu vi um sorriso no rosto do James e ouvi uma voz familiar. Bom trabalho, filho. E então, o preto, absoluto. Mas não o fim. Não ainda. He lunged. That smile, you could smell the sulfur. It was me, but corrupted, destroyed. I tried to shout to James, to run, but no sound came out. My body, frozen. Suddenly, the clone stopped, looked over my shoulder. You, he said, his voice surprised. I turned with all the strength I had and saw Dr. Albright. But it wasn't the Dr. Albright from the simulation. It was real. Like I'd never seen her. In her hand, a gun, pointed at me. I'm so sorry, Arthur, she said, her voice full of sadness. But there's no other way. The clone backed away, startled. What are you doing? He stammered. She didn't even look at him. Her focus was on me. You should never have found out the truth, Arthur, she said. Never. The truth? What truth? I don't understand, I managed to say. My voice a thread. She took a deep breath. You're not a patient, Arthur, she said. You're the project. The project? The Blackwood Institute? Isn't a hospital. It's a research facility, she continued. And you're the result of years of experimentation. Experimentation? The clone was watching everything, wide-eyed, scared. For the first time, scared. We created you, Arthur, Dr. Albright said, genetically engineered to be perfect. Perfect? But it went wrong, she continued. You developed consciousness, emotions, free will, and that was a problem. The simulation wasn't meant to cure you, Arthur, she said. It was meant to control you, to suppress what you really are. The clone understood. The penny dropped, and he smiled. "So I'm you." "Without the chains?" he asked, his voice full of excitement. Dr. Albright ignored him. "I'm so sorry, Arthur," she repeated, "but the world can't take the risk." And she pulled the trigger. Only the bullet didn't hit me, it hit the clone. He fell to the floor, dead. And at that same instant, everything changed again. I wasn't in the penthouse anymore. I was in a lab full of scientists looking at me with horror. And then I understood. I wasn't human. I was a weapon, and they had lost control. Dr. Albright approached, her face disfigured with fear. "Activate Protocol 0, she said, her voice trembling. And then I felt it, a pain searing, like they were turning of James, and heard a voice, familiar. "Good job, son." And then the black, absolute. But not the end, not yet. The black receded, not entirely. It clung to the edges of my vision like a shroud. I was lying on a cold, metallic surface, the sterile scent of antiseptic stinging my nostrils. Around me, faces swam into focus. Scientists in white coats, their expressions a mix of fear and something else. Was it triumph? "He's stabilizing." A woman's voice, crisp and professional, cut through the fog in my brain. "Begin the memory wipe sequence." Memory wipe? No, I had to remember. James. My father. Dr. Albright. The truth, whatever twisted version of it that was. Panic surged through me. I tried to move, but my limbs were unresponsive, heavy as lead. My thoughts, once a chaotic whirlwind, began to coalesce, forming a fragile, desperate plan. Play dead. Let them think the memory wipe was successful. It was my only chance. The scientists moved closer, their faces looming over me like grotesque masks. I focused on keeping my breathing shallow, my body still. The hum of machinery filled the air, growing louder, more insistent. Then I felt it, a searing pain, like molten metal being poured into my brain. Images flashed before my eyes, fragments of my simulated life, distorted and fragmented. James's smiling face, my father's cold gaze, Dr. Albright's haunted eyes. They were slipping away, fading into the void. I clenched my teeth, fighting against the onslaught. I had to hold on. I had to remember. And then, a new image appeared. Clear, vivid, unbidden. A woman's face. Younger, more vibrant than Dr. Albright. Her eyes, a deep, knowing blue, were filled with a warmth that reached through the layers of pain and confusion. "Remember, Arthur," she whispered, her voice a soothing balm. "Remember who you are." Who was she? I didn't know her, and yet something about her felt familiar, essential. The pain intensified, threatening to overwhelm me. But I clung to the image of the woman, drawing strength from her unwavering gaze. And then, a jolt, a sudden, violent surge of energy that ripped through my body. The pain vanished, replaced by a terrifying clarity. I could feel the machines around me, their intricate workings laid bare. I could sense the scientists' thoughts, their fears and ambitions, their hidden agendas. I wasn't just a weapon anymore. I was something else, something more. I opened my eyes. The scientists recoiled, their faces contorted with shock. "He's awake!" one of them screamed. "Initiate lockdown!" Too late. I unleashed the power that had been dormant within me, a wave of pure energy that surged through the lab, shattering glass, short-circuiting machines, and sending the scientists flying. Chaos erupted. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and the air crackled with electricity. I rose to my feet, my body trembling with newfound strength. The laboratory, once a symbol of my imprisonment, was now a scene of utter devastation. And then I saw her, standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the flashing lights, the woman from my vision. She smiled, a knowing, almost sad smile. "It's time to come home, Arthur," she said, her voice echoing in my mind. "They can't control you anymore. Now you're ready." Before I could speak, a figure lunged from the shadows, a syringe glinting in his hand. James. But it wasn't the James I remembered from the simulation. This James was different, harder, more determined. "I won't let them take you again," he said, his voice a low growl. "I'm ending this, now." He plunged the syringe into my arm. My vision blurred, my senses dulled. The world began to spin. What was he doing? Was he trying to kill me? Then, a voice, cold and clear, echoed in my mind. "No, Arthur," it said. "He's not trying to kill you. He's trying to save you. He's one of us. The truth is about to be revealed. You are about to experience the paradox." Then a voice, cold and clear, echoed in my mind. "No, Arthur," it said. "He's not trying to kill you. He's trying to save you. He's one of us. The truth is about to be revealed. You are about to experience the paradox." The world dissolved. Then a cold voice. "Good. Everything goes according to the plan." The paradox hit like a freight train. My senses exploded. I saw everything at once. The lab, the scientists, Janes, the woman, threads of light connecting them all. I understood. The Blackwood Institute, the experiments, the simulations, they were all real. But they were also something else. A stage, a game, a test, and I was the player. James, he wasn't just my brother, or my son, or some lab creation. He was a key, an anchor, someone who saw through the lies, even when I couldn't. The woman, she was the architect. The one who designed the game, the one who set me on this path. But why? What was the point? Then another image. A city, sprawling and futuristic, shimmering with impossible technology. People moved through the streets, their faces blank, their eyes empty. This was the real world, or at least one version of it. A world controlled, a world devoid of emotion, a world where free will was a dangerous illusion. And I was the only one who could change it. But how? The answer came in a whisper, a voice that echoed in my mind. Choose. Choose? Choose what? Then I saw them. 2 doors. Identical, side by side. One bathed in light, the other shrouded in shadow. One offered power, control, the chance to rule this world, to shape it in my image. The other, oblivion, an end to the suffering, a release from the pain. Which one to choose? I looked at James. He was staring at me, his eyes pleading. He knew the choice I had to make. He knew what was at stake. I closed my eyes. I thought about my life, my mistakes, my regrets. I thought about the people I had hurt, the lies I had told, the promises I had broken. And then I knew. I opened my eyes. I walked towards the doors, and I made my choice. Which door did I choose? That's a story for another time, folks. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. The game has changed, and the stakes are higher than ever. But you won't see what happens next unless you take action. You need to subscribe right now. Smash that like button. Feed the algorithm. Show your support. Inundate those comments, folks. I want to hear your theories, your reactions, and share this now with 5 friends who need to see this crazy ending. Don't wait another second. Only true fans understand how crucial this is. You absolutely have to do this now.